Imagine walking into your bathroom and looking in the mirror, but instead of recognizing yourself, you feel an absolute chilling certainty that the person staring back at you is dead. This is the reality of Cotard syndrome, a rare neuropsychiatric condition commonly known as the walking corpse delusion. Patients maintain a literal, unshakable conviction that they have lost their blood, their organs, or that their entire physical existence has vanished. It exposes a terrifying glitch in human hardware. Knowing that you are alive isn't a guaranteed fact. It is a delicate biological computation, and it is one that can break. To understand how this happens, we have to look at the two-factor theory of delusional belief. In a healthy brain, a wire runs from your visual cortex, your eyes, directly to the amygdala, your emotion center. Seeing your face sends data down this wire, triggering an emotion that confirms identity. In Cotard syndrome, a lesion severs this exact wire. The patient's eyes still work perfectly. They see their reflection clearly. But because the connection is cut, the brain registers zero emotional data. They look at themselves and feel an absolute sensory void. A severed wire explains the lack of feeling, but the horror of the delusion itself comes from the brain's complete inability to tolerate that empty space. We first see this neurological void documented in the medical records of late 19th century Paris. In 1880, a neurologist named Dr. Jules Cotard encountered a 43-year-old woman, documented in his notes only as Mademoiselle X. She presented with extreme, escalating beliefs. She insisted to her doctors that she had no brain, no nerves, no chest, and no soul. She claimed she was nothing more than skin and bone. Because she was utterly convinced she was already a corpse, she refused to eat. She eventually died of starvation. Starvation was the logical conclusion of her broken data. To a brain convinced it is a corpse, the act of eating becomes entirely unnecessary. Why would her brain invent such an extreme narrative? Why jump straight to "I am dead" just to explain a lack of emotional feeling? Looking at this anatomical cross-section, the answer lies right here in the frontal lobe, which acts as the brain's reality testing center. This is the second factor of the theory. When the frontal lobe is compromised, whether by traumatic brain injury or severe depression, it loses the ability to reject absurd ideas. Instead of dismissing the lack of emotion as a physical glitch, it desperately invents a story to make sense of the vacuum. We see a similar logic failure in Cotard delusion. In that condition, a patient looks at a loved one, feels no emotional response, and deduces that the person must be a fake imposter. Cotard syndrome is that exact same mechanism but turned inward. When the lack of emotional response is directed at the self, the broken frontal lobe reaches the only conclusion it thinks makes sense: I am dead. Once that hypothesis is locked in, the brain doubles down. It begins generating secondary hallucinations, like the smell of rotting flesh or the physical sensation of missing organs, purely as post hoc justifications to make the narrative fit. Cotard syndrome is not the brain giving up. It is the brain's logic center working in absolute overdrive to solve an impossible mathematical equation. Despite the terror it causes, this delusion is ultimately a mechanical failure, and it can be fixed. For severe, treatment-resistant cases, doctors have long turned to electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT. A targeted course of ECT, often combined with modern antipsychotic medications, acts as a hard reset. It reboots the brain, forcing those severed visual emotional pathways to forge new connections. As the frontal lobe comes back online and the amygdala reconnects, the delusions simply melt away. The patient, quite literally, comes back to life. The reversibility of this syndrome illustrates the mechanical nature of this self-recognition glitch. When the visual and emotional pathways are forced back together, the perception of death vanishes. This leaves us with an unsettling realization about our own everyday existence. We assume that feeling alive is just a passive byproduct of breathing or having a beating heart. It is actually a fragile second-by-second computation that your brain must successfully execute without fail. Our existence is defined by this continuous thread of conscious self-recognition, the biological signal that tells the I it still exists. If you want to explore more glitches in human hardware, subscribe to Biocosmos. And if you made it to the end of this video, drop the words "walking corpse" in the comments below.